All right. Well, this is philosophy 5, in which I'm going to talk about Descartes and some theism. Um, but well, I talked about it in 4. I recommend you go look at the beginning of 4 if you haven't seen. If you don't understand why this video is stable, uh, and why this is number 5 when there's no 3, there is a 4. Hence why I'm currently plugging number 4. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but I think the first like 5 minutes I talk about it. Maybe even the first like 3 minutes. Anyways, um, so Descartes questioned his own existence, or as some people might have simply thought about questioning his own existence. I personally think I might be putting my own image onto him, but I think he might have been more along the lines of questioning his own existence. Just given that I hear that apparently he like isolated himself as completely as he could, making sure that he more or less could just think about philosophy while he was writing his meditations, which is the book that this is going over. I don't necessarily recommend you read it, but I recommend it in the very least you watch a couple of people discussing it, and not if you can, not just discussing meditation 1 and 2, but that's what most people will, because a lot of people sort of describe how uh, Descartes, Rene Descartes, for instance. What other Descartes is there? Maybe there's another one. So, Descartes a lot of people view Descartes as digging a hole philosophically for people, not getting through. I think he did get us out, or at least he gave us a way to get us out. The hole he digs is existence. One example often given is a dream. How can we prove that we're not simply dreaming this thing we call reality? Because, for instance, our own perceptions of reality can easily be proven on many occasions to be false. For instance, maybe you're at a crowded place, or maybe not. You see someone from behind. They look like a friend. You know it's your friend. So you call out to them. They turn around, and it's not your friend. It's someone completely different. Now that you know it's not someone else, you look at their features and you realize, how could I even have thought this was my friend? But you did. That is a question of perception. You perceive that person to be your friend. Um, so our perceptions can easily trick us. And by the flip side of things, many people, hopefully, well, many people have on many occasions. Well, think of it in this way: when you are dreaming, it's hard to pull out memories of dreams. But when you are dreaming, do you think I am dreaming? I mean, if you are, I know there is some sort of meditation technique in which you can control your own dreams by realizing that they are dreams. But for me, in most occasions, I imagine that as the perfectly understandable reality. Even if thinking about the details as much as I can in hindsight, it seems completely strange. So, if we can view whatever we want as perfectly understandable and true reality, even if it's not, how can we be sure that this thing which we are talking about is not a dream? Now, I don't think Descartes necessarily thinks that reality is a dream, but it's simply to point out that our perceptions can easily trick us. Or not even trick us. We can trick ourselves, I guess. So Descartes then brings up the question, I suppose: how can one be certain that what they are viewing is real rather than simply the mind's view of something not happening, but telling ourselves that it is? For instance, any weird dream you've ever had. In the time which you were dreaming, you thought of as truth. How can we simply know? How can we not know that that is not true, for instance, and that what we are viewing now is, in fact, not simply the dream? That when we are in the dream, if we think of what we imagine as our everyday life, we would not think of that as dreaming. I know, complicated. Um, so Descartes Well, Descartes, one of the things he's well known for, again, because people pretty much read through to Meditations 2 and then stop, is I think, therefore I am, which is, honestly, it doesn't convince me of my own existence. I don't think that's a valid reason for existence personally, but then personally I think that this is a question which every individual has to ask themselves on their own. They have to ask and answer without any aid, I think, or at least without, you can't prove someone else's existence. Oh, hey, there's my sock foot, in case you thought this was sock footage. Hello. Um, so, uh, you can't prove to someone else their own existence, at least not in this way, I think. But Descartes' reasoning for it was that in whatever circumstance he imagined, even, for instance, the dream, there is an observer, there is a self which imagines it, and it's always him. So he has to be thinking of it for it to at least seem real. I'm sure I'm butchering the actual view of that, but that's how I understood it anyways. So in Descartes' view, because he is always imagining himself, he then must, because he is the universal in all of those situations he can think of, he must exist. So he has a basis. He exists. Now, as revolutionary as this is, although I think it was less revolutionary to Descartes as it was, or it was more, yeah, Descartes didn't view it in the same way I did. I'll explain how I viewed this in a bit, although I hadn't actually heard of any of Descartes' meditations before I came up with this. It was just a breath of fresh air when I realized I wasn't the only crazy person questioning my own existence. One thing is, at this point, at the I think, therefore I am, and the question of one's own existence and perception, most people cut off the line with Descartes. One main reason, of course, is, although I don't think there's a huge amount of intolerance, I guess, distolerance? People aren't very crude about religious views, but they tend to not view them as legitimate sources of philosophical belief. Whenever someone comes into there is a God, therefore, most philosophers in the last 100 years or so pretty much said, nope, that's just, I'm not. So, aside from the anti-theists, no one is saying, who preference, atheists are, don't believe in God. Anti-theists are, believe that believe that believing in God is evil. Anyways, aside from the anti-theists, who thankfully there have never really been many of them, there are very few who think that purely religious arguments are bad. It's just that people seem to think of them as invalid. I don't. Although, well, not some of them anyways. Sometimes people more or less seem to just chalk it up to God exists, therefore I don't have to keep questioning this, which I don't think is true. But the revolutionary thing, the revolutionary thing that Descartes explained is that a good God would not make a human race, or a race in general, which could perceive its own reality in a false manner, I suppose is the best way to say that. So, if therefore God exists, there is no way, at least that a good God would create a species which didn't perceive its own reality in the way that it truly was. So, therefore, he has to be able to trust at least some of his own perceptions. Therefore, he can be certain that he is thinking, therefore he is existing. Now, to be fair, I suppose I'm not much better. I was criticizing people a minute ago for stopping after Descartes' second meditation, but then I cut off the third meditation. But from this point, he effectively goes on to prove the rest of his own world to himself. And I guess presumably after that point lives comfortably. But I think that most people tend to cut it off at, I think, therefore I am, and not question why they think. But this whole idea that at least a noble creator, maybe not necessarily good, but at least not actively evil, not actively cruel, would not have created a being which could not perceive its own reality, at least partly correctly. It's obvious that if God exists, then God has created a species which can create illusionary things which it perceives as real, such as mirages in the desert, the dreams which at the time you view as reality, or the back of the person's head which you see as your friend's head until you realize it's not your friend, and then you realize they have blonde hair, not brown, or something crazy like that. So this results in my view, if you view this as true, that there must therefore I think it shifts the assumption. As much as I think therefore I am is genius, it doesn't, at least not to me, it doesn't really prove existence. It just proves that if you assume there is existence, you can then assume that you exist, which is actually the point of view I was coming from until I read up on Descartes. But I've shifted the assumption. And at least in my view, I'm not assuming quite as much anymore. I'm not assuming in the existence of existence. I am now assuming the existence of a, at least, not actively evil creator, not actively cruel creator. So in that, I can assume that at least some of my own perceptions are not false. So, similar to how Descartes reasoned through it, but different also, I actually worked through my own reasoning on this in fours. I have a little drawing. Let's see, where's the camera? There it is. You're not going to be able to see it, but I have it on a little notepad here. I proved this to myself in 4 parts, which, if I'm lucky, I have the battery life to talk about. Understand that I proved these things, although I proved some other stuff later on to myself. I proved the first, 30% of my reasons for believing I exist before I read up on Descartes, but it makes a lot more sense now that I can assume my own perceptions are true, or that I can know my own perceptions are true because I'm only assuming in the existence of a not actively evil creator, which is nice. It really is nice to be able to know that I'm not just going off of crazy assumptions. I'm going off of one assumption, which, if it is true, therefore proves everything else. And I'm not going to go off of the assumption that that one assumption is false, actually, because I was questioning my own assumptions of existence, and that was just an endless hole. But then I proved existence with whatever. This is an endless hole. I'm gonna actually do the assumption. I'm not gonna question my assumption. I'm just gonna view my assumption as fact, while also knowing it to be an assumption. That my own assumption might change a little bit. For instance, I might view God as a neutral factor, or maybe not even an intelligent being, more like a Brahman, or Indian style, everything everything, not even a being, just the universe, which created itself to be as this sort of thing. Anyways, so to how I proved this to myself. In my view, my initial view of creation was, if there is existence, which I now know there must be, or if there is non-existence, there must therefore be an opposite in which to refer it to. So there cannot something must exist, because the only way you can view things as not existing is if there is something to compare them to, which is the flip and reverse of them. So therefore, if there is existence, there must be non-existence. This is really metaphysical, but there's no avoiding that at this point. We're going in the deep end, folks. So there must be something which exists. I came to a similar conclusion to Descartes' I think therefore I am, but not exactly. This was another assumption, but it's not now that I can't stop talking about how assuming a not actively evil creator just gets rid of all but one assumption, and how amazing that is. But anyways, I was assuming that if something exists, the only way I can view the rest of the world is in viewing the fact that I exist, because I can't, no matter what I do, it is always imagining the things in reference to myself. So I have to assume I exist. I'm not assuming it anymore. I know it is. I know it is. Yeah, I guess that's the right phrasing for this sort of thing. So I use the same reasoning, which is why I tend to prove things to myself in fours. So the two factors which I use are like me and its opposite not like me, and is me and its opposite isn't me. So of course there's the here notepad. So I imagine a little plus sign with four. There's four sections on your paper. If you want to draw along with me, I suppose. Um, in the top left corner, there is me. There, I am both like me and uh, am me. I am me and I am like me. But if in order for there to be a me, there must be something to compare it to, which is not me. So therefore, I prove to myself the existence of at least one other. Now, this gets a little complicated, and you can view this as either one other person, all other people, or as God. If that, assuming in that God would be an intelligent or an actively intelligent being. But I prefer to view it more as the knowledge that there is at least one other being who is like me but not me, who is one other self which is not myself. Um, which from there, if there is at least one other, there's no particular reason to think that there either is or is not several. So I tend to just use that as I have evidence based on my perceptions that there is many, 7-something billion others, so that I can assume basically that they are real. At least their selves are real. So that's the like me category. So yeah, for reference, the others are the top. So I am the top left. The others are the top right. Now we're going to the total opposite of me. We'll start with the bottom left. Something which is me but is not like me. I view that as my body. There has to be something which is not like me or the others, or the other, which it is not like us. How do I best describe it? It is not there. Okay, there must be something which is not like us, but still is, I guess. There is an underlying category here of things which are is and is not in pure existence form. So, for instance, for the me, there must also be something which is me and is like me, but is not. By the same token, there must be something which is an other or others, is like me, but is not me and is not. So, others which do not exist. So from that, you can get whatever you want. Whether you can, mythology or false gods or whatever you want to get, you can get it from there. Anyway, but I'm just kind of going to go over the side of things which are rather than the side of things which are not, because from that perspective, it's easier to view things in a more direct way. All the things which are not, simply put, are not. So I can prove, but as you understand that every little thing I prove that is, there is of course a flip which is identical to it, except in that it does not exist. That was not a word. In that it does not exist. Anyways, so there must be something which is like the me and the other or others, but is not us. And to that I prove, to myself physical reality. For reference, the flip of that, of course. So physical reality is the bottom right, and then my body is the bottom left. So I prove to myself the only thing left is that there is something. I'll go over all of them, I guess. So the top left is like me and is me, which is myself. The top right is like me and is not me, which is other or others. The bottom right is not like me and isn't me, which is either the world or the bodies of the others, if you want to view it from the perspective of my body being the center rather than myself being the center. Anyways, So then the only thing left is that there must be something which is not like me, but then is me. And what else is left that is me other than myself? And that's my body, since I perceive things not just from myself, but from, for instance, my eyes. I touch things and I hold them. I dip my toe into the water, although you can't see it, and it gets wet, and I perceive cold and wet. So that's how I get my body. Well, 20 minutes. So yeah, that's my analyzation of Descartes and uh, my own methods of proving my existence. In my view, Descartes sort of ignores the question of existence. He just kind of assumes there is an existence, and then from there proves his own existence, and then assumes the existence of God to prove the rest. Or maybe but in order for God to exist, something has to exist. So he never even tackled the question of non-existence. Uh, Even though, I don't know, I view it as fundamental, but also very simple, because for there to be a non-existence, there of course must be something to compare it to, therefore an existence. So yeah, so there must be something which is not existence. Uh, so by the same token, there must be something which is not existence, so non-existence. Of course, that even setting aside the wordplay there, because I'm viewing this as pure concept, setting aside the wordplay of things like uh, existence being, or non-existence being a concept, therefore it would exist, because concepts have to also exist. A concept would not, at least not in my view, count as something which does not exist, because that is an existent concept. Anyways, so, but I'm viewing non-existence not just as the existing concept of non-existence, but as the actual non-reality of not existing, I guess. Anyways, there's my metaphysics for the day. You might notice if you watch these back to back, I probably want to upload them back to back since I have to render them separately, and then I'll probably upload 4 as 5 is rendering. But if you watch these back to back, you'll probably notice that they're filmed basically at the same place and basically at the same time of day. They are, and that's because I was planning on just remaking 3 into 4, but because my view, like I explained in the beginning of 4, my view had changed, so I'm splitting this up more, and of course higher production value. So, all right, there's that. See you in any next vlog, or if you just watch these philosophies, I'll see you in Philosophy 5, which will probably come out sooner now that I can do this not only faster but better with desktop, well, computer anyways, that's not a phone. All right, enjoy the turkeys.